Thank you for joining and welcome to our first live quarterly wellness webinar for 2023. Our GBS Health and Wellness team coordinates quarterly wellness webinars that all of our clients' employees are invited to attend, and we're glad to have you here today. We chose to focus on nutrition for this first one of the year because March is National Nutrition Month, and some of you may be familiar with our monthly wellness newsletter bundle. And our theme for 2023 is the year of intention, hence the title for today's talk, Intention in the Kitchen. I'm going to be focusing on meal planning today. And when I think about how popular this topic is and how many people struggle with it, it's kind of counterintuitive because each of us needs to eat multiple times a day. And so when we think about all of the things in our days and in our lives that truly are unpredictable, getting hungry is just one of the most predictable things. So it really makes sense to have a plan in place for when hunger strikes, and we shouldn't be caught off guard. When I think about what we're really probably trying to get at when we want more information on education on how to meal plan, is really how to feed ourselves in a way that provides energy, keeps us satisfied, and is just as simple as possible so we can focus our attention to the many other matters that demand it in our lives. By way of brief agenda, today I'm going to be talking about just meal prep 101, and then we're going to go through a few main tips for making healthy choices easy. And then I have a section on setting goals and creating habits, a couple of recipes just to help you with inspiration and to brainstorm things that you're going to want to focus on. And then I'll leave a few minutes for Q&A. If anyone has questions, you can drop those in the Q&A feature. Or in the chat, and then our wellness coordinator, Elise, is on, and she'll be helping us work through those questions at the end. So this is one of my favorite quotes for meal planning, and I have to share an embarrassing story to start. So I'll never forget this day. I was coordinating to eat lunch in our break room at the office here at GBS with my brand new coworker and now friend, despite the story that I'm about to tell you. And it was a Friday, which is typically a day that I work remotely. So between that and just mostly being out of groceries for the week, I needed to run across the street to a grocery store next to our office and grab something because all I had packed from home was this microwavable, like curried lentil veggie packet. And so I give it over to the store. I was mostly uninspired by the grab and go options that were there. And I ultimately returned with a cold, like garden type of salad, and proceeded then to warm up my curry packet in the microwave. And then I covered it with my cold salad or my cold salad with the curry packet. And I'll just never forget the look on my new friend's face. It was a mixture of awe and humor and maybe a bit of shock that our company's wellness director and registered dietitian, me, had that choice for lunch. And I had really just dropped the ball on my meal planning on this particular week. And this lunch was not only embarrassing, it didn't taste good. It was just a total fail. And from that, like kind of rock bottom lunch forward, even though some of my lunches are absolutely a bit scrappy and they're basic, I've at least made a concerted effort to really be more intentional with prepping what I eat during office work days, saving myself the embarrassment, but also most importantly, putting the control back into my own hands of what I choose to nourish myself with. Which I can report that up to this point has always been more satisfying and well-rounded than that warm curried vegetable mix on my garden salad. Okay, so starting with the basics, why does meal prep even matter? So a few key benefits to meal prepping, the first being diet quality. Meal prep really helps you set up to just have a more diverse, nutritionally rich selection of meals and snacks for your week. Other benefits include better time management. So just thinking about the chaos that many weekdays and evenings even bring, we're much more likely to swing by the drive-thru or order takeout, do something just based on convenience alone if a plan hasn't already been made. And meal prep then just kind of can put some control back into your own hands as just one less variable to consider as the week progresses. And we can't leave out the cost factor as well. just significant financial savings can be gained when we plan and when we prep. We can complain about the rising cost of grocery staples, but I'll tell you, on the whole, it's a lot more affordable than eating out, especially if you use strategies at the store like budget shopping. In my work, just as a dietitian and as a wellness consultant, I always start with an assessment. So before I jump into my meal planning tips, I just want to encourage you to take a baseline of where you're at today, so that you can set goals then for where you want to be and work backward on how to get there. Not for the purpose necessarily of diet quality or counting calories or macros, but really to gauge how much energy, time, and money you're currently spending to eat. So when you're doing this self-assessment, be sure to include a few of the elements listed here. First is context. So were you in a hurry? Were you on your way to work or heading home after a late sports practice with your kids? Had you perhaps waited too long to eat and you were just too hungry to work out what you wanted to make when you got home? Cost factor is pretty straightforward, but also a key element there to help probably encourage you to maybe do some more meal prepping when you start to realize those like Starbucks drive-thrus really add up in the week. And then what did you eat? What did you consume? Were you able to repurpose any of it for leftovers or other meals? And then bonus, of course, how did you feel? Because that's a key component of what will keep us going back to any habits that we want to form. Okay, so my first major meal prep tip is write it out. So do what's realistic for you. For example, I'm not someone who necessarily wants to think about, what I'm going to eat for dinner next Saturday night when it's now only just Sunday morning that I'm meal planning. So I typically have a few meals planned and some things that could be turned into meals, but I also want to leave space for going out to eat, going over to a friend's for dinner, things like that. Also, food waste just makes me cringe. So with all of this in consideration, I'm just one who would rather make a midweek food run to top off what I have than to be rigid about what we've planned so that groceries don't go to waste and not having room for flexibility. Again, just do what works for you. But writing out the number of meals and snacks you're going to need for the week is a great starting point. And then you want to account for what you have on hand. Is anything in your fridge about to spoil or go to waste? Just be sure to include these items in your next meals. And then number 3 within this is just naming the actual meals and snacks. So this can help identify gaps that you haven't accounted for, mostly with snacks. I always like to buffer a little extra, knowing that if I only pack a lunch for the day, I'm going to be hitting, office candy jars around 3 or 4. So pack snacks, that's an easy thing to forget, but likely that you'll need something in your day. And 4 is just make a grocery list. This can help us stay focused and on track when we're actually at the store. And then probably my favorite tip is plan for the unexpected. So this kind of relates back to accounting for snacks and having a bit extra on hand. It's just especially helpful to have shelf-stable options, like crackers, nuts, dry roasted edamame is one of my favorites, or wasabi peas, something that's shelf-stable that's going to hit the spot for you, maybe some bars. I always have a little candy stash just because I know I like to have a sweet treat from time to time in my office drawer. Just have an emergency stash. And the same goes for planning with your week too. Just plan to have a little bit extra on hand for the unexpected. My second tip is simple is sustainable. So this is a great rule of thumb. And just back to the assessment of where you're currently at, be realistic here. This just reminds me of the concept of leveling up. And so taking an assessment, an honest assessment of where you're at today, how can you just up your game in a small way now? Hopefully one or more of these tips that we'll go over can be easily incorporated, but just be realistic in trying to just up your game a little bit. And you don't have to do all of these. I'm just maybe taking one of them and trying to incorporate it into your routine. So easy, quick dinner options. A busy weeknight is probably not the time to pull out the recipe book and try a new dish and have to go to the store for 95 different ingredients. So have a few go-to options that you can rotate into your weekly meal plans. You know exactly how to make these dishes, how much time is needed for them. I used to do breakfast for dinner as a kid, about once a week. And that was awesome. Just as a kid, I thought it was cool to have breakfast for dinner. And it's just a generally quick and easy option. So think about things like that that work for you. Use your slow cooker. This is a great option to prep the night before or the morning of. It can be more or less ready to eat when you get home from the day. This past Sunday, my husband and I did a roast in the slow cooker, and we've just been eating that as our protein with meals that can be repurposed throughout the week. So that's been awesome. The next one is just cooking in bulk. So you can consider meals that you can double for leftovers. So just what you're already eating and just make extra. Things like pasta salads, meat sauce, stir fries, dishes like that can just be made, you can make extra of, and then freeze them or portion them into servings that you can have throughout the week for lunches. And don't be afraid of meal delivery services. This can work really well for some people. There's a ton of options out there that are really specific to any dietary preferences or budget health goals. So you can just kind of check out what one might be a good fit for you and your family's needs. And then last but not least, nothing is wrong with the sandwich. So really just like back to keeping it simple. There's nothing wrong with the sandwich. And sometimes it's just nice to have a little convenient thing to have on hand. A couple of additional thoughts for keeping it simple is just taking advantage of convenience food. So if you're buying like pre-cut vegetables or fruits, and that's the only way that you're going to use them, it's totally worth it. There's nothing wrong with that. Another option in line with that is that's not listed here is grocery pickup orders. If that's the best way that you're going to be able to choose healthy options for you and your family, then go for it. Nothing to be ashamed of there. And then keep a list of your current family favorites, and then those can be staples that you just rotate into your weekly menu. My last major meal prep tip is just make it sticky. So the first one within this is gamify. And here you see the little fish bowl, but especially if you live with others or you have kids, how can you make it fun? What about listing a different meal option on paper and letting each person just blindly draw a paper out of the fish bowl or jar? And then that can help guide what meals you're gonna have for the week. You can involve your household. So other than just including in this game idea, how can you involve others? This is a great teaching opportunity for littles, having them help in any or all of the steps along the way. So have them check the fridge or pantry for what you already have and think about ways to use those items. And maybe they can get one item that they can add to the grocery list for the week, and you can help them explore like, what's a different vegetable that we haven't tried? Or if you're brave, you can bring them shopping with you and also let them pick out something fun to try, or maybe a treat to enjoy for their lunches during that week. And then the last is include this in a ritual. So this will look different for everyone, but I like to use Sunday mornings just to chat with my husband about the upcoming week. Do we have any commitments where we're not going to be home for dinner, or where we're reasonably going to need a pre-made meal? Is this an eating out or takeout night? What groceries do we have in the fridge that we need to use? What do we want to have this week? This is a pretty quick discussion, but for me, it's an important step in the process and just helps us gear up for the week ahead beyond just what we're going to be eating, but just in terms of schedules and aligning calendars too. Of course, not each of these tips is necessarily going to resonate with everyone, but hopefully something that you heard sticks and you can try incorporating that into your routine. So now I'm going to move on and discuss a little bit about setting goals and building habits. And within that, we'll uncover also just some strategies to make healthy choices also easy choices. So our wellness team at GBS recently read this book, Atomic Habits. And it's a popular book for just making small, tiny changes to build good habits or to break ones that aren't serving you. So it's just top of mind for me right now. And I couldn't create this presentation without including a section on habits. And one of the key concepts in this book is the habit loop that's represented in this graphic. And simply put, a cue triggers a craving, and then that motivates a response that provides a reward. And if the reward satisfies your craving, then it's positively associated back with the cue. So this framework can be applied to absolutely any type of habit that you're trying to form or break. And we'll walk through a little bit more in detail here. So to break it down, each section of that habit loop is associated with a specific law, at least as it's laid out in the book. And it's really just about setting up your environment for success and positively reinforcing the habits that you want to encourage. So I'm going to walk through an example and focus on lunch prep, because that seems to be the trickiest meal, at least for most of the working professionals like yourselves that I interact with. So for the cue, the law here is, how do we make it, or it's to make it obvious. But the question is, how do we make it obvious? And you can use like maybe a whiteboard on your fridge or a chalkboard in your kitchen, writing out lunch meals for the week. Or maybe do you have a lunch bag or cooler that you pack and you can place it in an obvious spot on your countertop, just a cue. And then for the craving, that's make it attractive. So here it's triggered by the cue. You want to work on setting up your environment or your cues to trigger habits that you really want to strengthen. So maybe you place your Tupperware or your lunch bag by your coffee pot. This is also a bit of a habit stacking type of tip, to combine a habit that you want to form with one that you already do and one that you love. So by placing your lunch bag by the coffee pot, the idea here is that as the coffee is brewing, or maybe you're enjoying a cup of coffee, you also pack your lunch. And then the response here is, how do we make it easy? And human behavior just generally follows the law of least effort or least resistance. And we just naturally tend to choose options that require the very least amount of work. So what can you include in your lunch prep to ensure that it's easy enough of a routine to choose moving forward? So this might be just making those bulk individual servings on the weekend, so you can just grab one from the fridge and stick it in your lunch bag. Maybe it's pre-making a sandwich, having some baggies of pre-cut vegetables ready to go, grabbing individual hummus packet with the veggies, maybe some string cheese. Just make it easy. And then for the reward, it's all about making it satisfying. So how can you make this process satisfying? This is going to significantly increase the odds that your new habit will be repeated. So this could be short term, like, hey, I loved how much more energy I had in my day, or I didn't have to stress about what I'd eat for lunch, or pass the point of hunger when I could finally leave my desk and go grab a bite. Or it could be long-term, like making a chart that you could check off each time that you successfully brought your lunch to work or prepped it in advance if you work from home. And then connect that reward with completing the chart. So this reminds me of an example from when I was in first grade. I had a 30-day chore chart that I had to complete before I got my ears pierced. And that was a great motivator for me, even as a kid, to stay on track. And the same idea can absolutely apply to us now as adults. So we're reinforcing the habits that we want to create or continue. And then the flip side of creating habits is just breaking habits that aren't serving you, and they're just simply inverting the laws that we just discussed to create habits. So here with the cue, for breaking a bad habit, you want to make it invisible, make it unattractive for the craving, for the response, make it difficult, and reward, make it unsatisfying. That's just a high level description of breaking bad habits, but you can check out that Atomic Habits book if this topic is really resonating with you. I highly recommend it. We really enjoyed reading it. And I just hope that this triggers some ideas for you as you work on creating habits specific around the topic of meal planning, or maybe you apply it to a different area of your life now that just needs more attention. For the last couple of slides that I'm going to go through, I just wanted to throw out some basic recipe ideas that, one, can be made in bulk, two, made in advance, or three, are just super easy to prepare. So these aren't really specific step-by-step instructions on a recipe, but they can provide hopefully inspiration for you, and then you can modify how it works best for you and your situation or health goals. And if you'd like more direction on some of these ideas, you can just search the internet places like Pinterest or Instagram are great social media platforms for specific ideas or just recipe inspiration. So if you're really interested in trying out chia seed pudding, for example, you can just Google that and then you'll find, a million different recipes that you can experiment with. So chia seed pudding, overnight oats, egg bakes, these are all just ideas that can be like made in advance. Like I said, stuck in their fridge. One of my favorites for actually both breakfast and lunch is toast variations. So that's in the picture that we have on the slide as well too, is just this avocado toast concept that most people are probably familiar with, and they have some over easy eggs on top. But the sky's the limit with toast variations. You could do avocado toast. One of my favorites is like cottage cheese. So I'll do like heirloom tomato and cottage cheese and maybe some balsamic glaze on there and cracked pepper and basil. Like you can just do so many variations, make it pretty. You could do Greek yogurt on toast. You could swap your toast for sweet potato and do like a sweet potato toast. You could use just any kind of different open face sandwich concept here. There's just so much creativity and variety with that one concept. And really what I'm getting with that is when I'm thinking about constructing, a breakfast or lunch or any kind of meal snack, I'm really thinking first about like, where's my protein source? And then am I getting in fiber? And that's mostly going to be from fruits and vegetables. Those are going to have other nutrient benefits like antioxidants, phytochemicals, lots of vitamins and minerals there in addition to the fiber source. So that's like a key component. And then also healthy fats. So those different components are going to be represented in all the ideas on this page here. And then just for a few quick lunch ideas, something that I guess just naturally think about when I'm packing lunches is like, can it be in like one container? So something like a grain bowl, you can just make on the weekend, do a batch cooking type of like, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of quinoa or couscous or pasta or something. And then maybe you make some grilled chicken and you have some veggies. It can all just go into one container. It's just a lot easier to grab and go. Salad in a jar, they definitely had their moment of fame. I'm not sure if it's still popular, but that's the picture we have here. It's beautiful, but also can be a great way to stack in a lot of different ingredients. You dump it on the plate and you're good to go. You have your dressing typically separate or on the bottom with the wet ingredients, so it doesn't kind of wilt the lettuce as you go through the week. Soups and stews, that's popular in my house, at least this time of year, especially in the winter months, just making a big batch of that on the weekend and then portioning it for the week. Potato boats are one of my favorite things. I'll literally bring like a sweet potato, I'll microwave it at work, and then I'll put like, I think this week or last week I did meat sauce that was left over and I put that in there, or chili you could do. Even if you make your own like tofu scramble or something like that and putting it into a sweet potato. I just tend to like that. It's a different way to eat. It's like its own little container. And then again, the toast idea that I just went through with the breakfast options. Okay, so bring this back just to the start. Hopefully adding attention to your meal planning and some of the tips that we discussed today is going to help you just take back some of the control that you have in your day and help keep you energized for all the things that really do matter to you beyond just the food that you're going to be eating. And most importantly, with this quote, don't be the person who tops a cold salad with a warm packet of curried vegetables. And with that, that's the remainder of my slides. So we can open here for questions with the few minutes that we have left over.
Awesome. Thanks, Becca. That was so much good information. We do have a couple of questions actually that people have already typed in. So let me scroll down. The first one is, what are your tips for picky eaters?
Oh, geez. That's a great, that's a great question. I almost feel like, oh, geez. We have some content on this. I don't know if that is asking for more like kids that are picky eaters and having trouble figuring out options for like, okay, if I'm eating this for dinner, how do I also not have to make 4 different meals for people? Our GBS wellness team has this how to feed a healthy family or something like that guide, and it goes over a lot of picky eater resources. So you are welcome to reach out to us, wellness@gbsbenefits.com, and we can send you some of those resources. I'm also just trying to remember there's some really excellent Instagram accounts if you're on social media that help with this too. One about, I want to say it's Kids Eat and Collar. Maybe Elise, you remember, is that one that goes
Yeah.
over a lot of those tips?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a really great one.
Okay, maybe you have, do you have any more?
No, that's like the first one that comes to
Okay.
mind, but I really like that one.
Awesome. So Kids Eat and Collar, try that. And I guess I'm just making the assumption that this is maybe about not you being a picky eater, because typically that's a little bit easier to navigate than having picky eaters that you have to feed. So if that doesn't answer your question, pop back in and we can take a different approach.
Okay, perfect. Next, let's see, my wife has dietary restrictions like gluten-free, dairy-free. How can we plan meals that are satisfying to the family, but also safe for her?
Yeah, that almost kind of is similar to the picky eating. I mean, it's not necessarily by choice that she's having to eat that way, but I think there's so many options that are gluten-free now and that are like dietary restriction friendly. Even like going out to eat now, you can really be a lot more trusting in what the menu says is gluten-free if they're using like a gluten-free preparation method too. Not mixing pots and things like that is important for people with celiac disease, for example. So there's just a lot more options available now. It's a trendier type of way to eat. So I think that don't be afraid to like try those options for your family as well. And then if it's just something as simple as like, you know what, we're doing sandwiches tonight and you're eating the Udi's gluten-free bread and I'm eating this other kind of bread here too, it's okay to not have to all eat the same thing. And then, yeah, there's a lot of like, even just things like more those starchy vegetables, like the sweet potato idea I was describing, like something like that, that's just naturally gluten-free, gravitating more to those types of starchy based options for your carbs might be helpful too, just so that everyone can enjoy that same meal if that's important to you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I feel like going along with that, what you were saying about like so many Instagram accounts,
Yeah.
like there are so many out there that I bet you could find ones that tailor specifically to those types of things. I don't know any off the top of my head, but
Good point.
yeah. Okay, another question. Any tips on how to get teenagers involved with meal prep?
Oh man. I'm glad to not have teenagers. I will say that. I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of teenagers is like this need for independence and control. And so giving some of that to them and involving them, like what I was mentioning in the slides of like involving them in that process of meal planning can be really important. So like whether it's on Tuesday night, this is all you, and they get the whole, like they're choosing what they get to have, depending on their age, maybe they're going to the store and they're responsible for the whole spectrum. And that could be like empowering to them and that could help just get them a little bit more engaged. So having them like just take control over the night or one night a week, or choosing meals or going to the store with you and like working through together, like what are the things that they're wanting to eat, trying to involve them in the process, I think can be really helpful for just also acknowledging that they're like growing adults and they're wanting to like, form that sense of independence. And if it feels like it's a battle, it's probably just that need for feeling more independent. So trying to give that to them could be helpful. Or having them just, I guess it depends on, again, the age and the interest and kind of the whole family dynamic, but just involving them in any kind of step along the process. I'm just trying to think too, like when I was a teenager and how did we approach this? Like I always had to like kind of help with something at dinner, even if it was just like making a salad. So, when you're a kid, it might be like, okay, here, cut this cucumber, or you give specific direction. And as you get older, maybe the teenager can actually like be responsible for, a more vague direction of like, you're going to make the salad. So they get to decide the amounts or the ingredients that go in that. just a few ideas that come to mind.
Love it. Those are all awesome tips.
Thanks for chiming in too, Elise. You have always great input.
I don't have teenagers either, so I don't have much to add to that.
Good luck, I guess, is the biggest response we can give you there.
Exactly. I don't think that there are any other specific questions, and we're out of time.
Okay, well, we can wrap it up. We really appreciate you joining us today. And if you have more questions or you need some more ideas, our GBS benefits website does have some different recipes on there, so you can always browse. Those have been created by our team. And then just reach out to our email account too. If there's any lingering questions that we didn't get to address, we'd be happy to help if we can.